welcome to the third panel in our Cyber Trends 2022 series. I'm Lisa Easterly, President and CEO of the Cyber Center of Excellence, or CCOE. We are a San Diego-based nonprofit that mobilizes businesses, academia, and government to grow the regional cyber economy and create a more secure digital community for all. Well, now cybersecurity is everyone's business. The FBI reports a 300% increase in cyber crimes across all industries since the pandemic began, with the average cost of a data breach climbing over $4 million, according to the Ponemon Institute. More than half of these costly attacks are aimed at small and medium-sized businesses, and that is our region's economic engine. Now pair that with the global shortage of cyber professionals to thwart these attacks to the tune about 3.5 million globally and more than 60,000 openings here in California, and it becomes mission critical to integrate cybersecurity into our daily practices. The good news is San Diego is leading the charge with more than 870 cyber firms and the U.S. Navy's Naval Information Warfare Systems Command. This cluster now accounts for more than 24,000 jobs and has a total economic impact of $3.5 billion annually. And that's equal to hosting 9 Super Bowls, or for all of you Marvel fans out there like me, 23 Comic-Cons. This collaborative ecosystem is developing new technology, defenses, and cyber warriors to combat the ever-evolving threat landscape. Let's tap into this robust expertise today with our esteemed panel to talk about lessons learned and best practices from some of the most under fire industries like defense, education, financial services, and the public sector that can be applied to all industries. It is my pleasure to welcome our panel today. So Ian, why don't you kick us off with introductions?
Sure, yeah. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Ian Brazill. I work for the City of San Diego's Department of IT as a program manager there. And I'm currently helping lead the effort to design and build and market the San Diego Regional Cyber Lab. And so the San Diego Regional Cyber Lab, the ultimate goal is to provide the greater San Diego region with a more collaborative cybersecurity awareness through the provisions of extra tools and intelligence and a more trained and capable workforce for the entire region. So this group, it consists of cybersecurity experts, academics, local CEOs, and other public officials who will be working together to hopefully enhance our entire region's cybersecurity resilience. And so we hope to accomplish this in a variety of ways that I'll get into later. But we're really excited to join the group here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Mark, we'll pass it to you.
Well, good morning, Lisa and everybody. It's great to be here today. I'm the Command Information Security Officer, or the military's equivalent of a CISO, for the Naval Information Warfare Systems Command, or NAVWAR for short. So our mission is to identify, develop, deliver, and sustain information warfighting and enterprise capabilities and services to enable naval, joint, national, and coalition operations in the warfighting domains from seabed to space. We're a worldwide organization with our headquarters here in San Diego, and we have system centers in San Diego and Charleston, South Carolina. There's around 11,000 military and civilian personnel in NAVWAR, plus a whole bunch of contract support personnel that support building these capabilities. NAVWAR has about a $9 billion annual budget, and about $7 billion of that goes to industry, and about $2 billion of that goes to small business. We have over 350 applications, systems, networks, data centers, and services capabilities that we need to protect in order to be able to fulfill our mission to the nation. Great to be here today.
Great. Thank you so much, Mark. And Miguel, you're up next, my friend.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning to you, Lisa, and good morning to my esteemed panelists and colleagues on the line. Pleasure to be here with you guys. I'm Miguel Sampo, and I am the Senior Director with Mastercard, and I work for the Cyber and Intelligence Division under the Riskrecon group. And so excited to be here. I've been in cybersecurity, I'm going to date myself now, 24 years. I think I've walked almost every single discipline of the cyber realm, you know, from endpoint protection to cloud security to SaaS to perimeter, you name it. And I find myself over the course of the last 4 years in this newer discipline called third-party risk management, vendor risk management, and the new buzzword that we're all hearing over the course of the last 24 months, supply chain management. And so from a supply chain management, I specialize in doing security risk assessments for your third-party and fourth-party vendors, as well as your own organizations, and talking about how we use cyber scoring and how we look at cyber hygiene and your cyber behaviors to help mitigate risk and help keep your organization protected and safe from the bad guys out there. So excited to be here and looking forward to the dialogue and the chat that we're going to have today. Thanks again, Lisa.
Awesome. Thanks, Miguel and Jerry. Last but certainly not least.
Thanks very much, Lisa, and welcome to everyone on the panel. Appreciate having the opportunity to chat with everyone this morning. I'm Jerry Sheehan, the Vice President, Chief Information Officer for San Diego State University, representing our campuses here in San Diego, our campus in Imperial Valley, and of course our new campus in Mission Valley that we'll talk a little bit more about as we grow out. San Diego State University really at that epicenter of looking at how we create the knowledge that's necessary among our 40,000 students to prepare them for the complexity of the cyber world that they live in right now. Also trying to meet that workforce development need, fundamental research from a transformative standpoint through partnerships with folks like NAVWAR and others, about $160 million worth of fundamental research being done at San Diego State University. And then this panel, I think, is a great example of partnership across multiple divisions and this concept of the public and private partnerships that really make sure that the knowledge that's being created, the transformations that are happening get diffused and applied in a seamless way to better protect the region.
Absolutely. Well, we're delighted to have you. We'll jump right in. Mark, the United States is the #1 target for cyber attacks, according to Microsoft, and San Diego is home to the largest concentration of military assets in the world. Can you speak to the broader defense cyber operations and perhaps including an unclassified view of how you've handled a recent vulnerability and some of the lessons you've learned from those experiences?
Well, I'll give it a shot here. And I think what I'll do is describe very briefly on kind of what the hierarchy is when it comes to getting directions on addressing vulnerabilities and an incident response. And so when it comes to defending the Department of Defense Information Networks, direction comes down from U.S. Cyber Command and down to lower echelons. And a major part of their mission statement is to direct, synchronize, and coordinate cyberspace planning and operations. And so that command seeks to mitigate risks indirectly by increasing resiliency in DoD systems against all threats. And so in carrying out their mission, they go ahead and provide directions down to lower echelons and the different components, the Army, Navy, Air Force, et cetera. And so U.S. Cyber Command provides direction to cyber forces down to Fleet Cyber Command in the case of the Navy. And Fleet Cyber Command is also operationally referred to as 10th Fleet for the Navy. And so their goal is to essentially carry out these directives in the fashion of protecting the Navy's networks and systems. And so from Fleet Cyber Command, it then filters, all this filters down to the Echelon 2 commands, of which NAVWAR is one of them. And in this case, we'll get directions that come down from up high that are either laying out a plan for defense overall and will provide direction and information on how that's to be carried out, or it will come down in the form of, hey, we've got vulnerabilities out there that are of major concern, and we need you to execute cyber defense actions in order to be able to protect against those vulnerabilities. Or it may actually come down to them sending down indication that of a breach. And so those are the sorts of things that come down from up on high. And of course, at NAVWAR, we're all about defending our over 350 information systems that we design, test, deliver, and maintain. And so we also not only have those systems we deliver out to the fleet, but we hold the whole research, development, testing, engineering network of laboratories. And so we take this very seriously, and particularly when it comes to vulnerability patching. So we get these top-down directions. They come into my office, and I've got a very, very small team that will take these directions, and we will go ahead and triage them, figure out what it's all about, where it's going to apply across our organization, and get the information out to the organization. So everybody, all our cybersecurity action officers across these systems know what's coming down, plus they get additional information out of us if it's specifically for their applications. And so there's a lot of challenges that come along with vulnerabilities, carrying out vulnerability defense. And so, for example, we've got pretty complex systems that we deliver for the naval forces. And so when we get these patch directives that come down, we have to do a lot of analysis on generally a lot of analysis on how we're going to incorporate those patches on these commercial systems, especially into that are part of our systems, and make sure that the work that we do on those patches is not inadvertently causing things to go bad, because the last thing you want to do is deliver a patch out to the fleet that has a chink in it and find out that now a weapon system is not doing what it's supposed to do. So we've got very strong engineering in the organization that makes sure those kind of things don't happen. And so that's one of those challenges that we do face. I'd say another thing that we face is getting the information out and getting people organized. And so I think one of the things that I can talk about is a little bit about a particular case that we had this last year. So we received a notification, a direction out of Fleet Cyber Command to identify this particular vulnerability, where it was embedded in where it was inside of all of our systems, and then to go ahead and carry out remediating actions, awaiting the vendor having a patch that we could apply. So it's kind of a multi-tiered kind of actions. And so the first thing on this that we did was we brought our team together to triage this. We got the word out to everybody that this is coming across all of our systems, and we're talking about dozens of cybersecurity action officers. And then we started to see, okay, so where is this targeted at? One of the things we found on this particular vulnerability is it was very widespread across our systems because of the nature of the product that it was on. And so that started opening our eyes that this was bigger than the average one. And the other challenge we found was that we also have data centers where we host what we call mission owner application, and there are hundreds of those. And each mission owner is responsible for carrying out their vulnerability remediation on their particular systems. But because they're part of a data center, it's like the link in a chain. You get a break in one, and it causes a problem across the whole data center potentially. And so in this case, we found that this was also we put the word out, this was also in a lot of our mission owner systems. So challenges that we faced right there. First of all, having a broader set of folks that we had to communicate with that went beyond our normal communications. And this is out to all those other mission owners. So making sure that we could bring them into the conversation. Getting coordination on this activity, because we needed to get it either out of these applications, or we had to cut them off of the network. And so making sure that we got that coordination done well. Making sure that everybody knew what to do as it's going through this patch development phase, and then executing and tracking and reporting up. So one of the, I'd say there's probably, I want to just share kind of three things that came out of this and other vulnerability exercises that we go through. And I'd call them the 3 C's. Really important here for either defensive ops in preventing a incident or an incident response. One is communication. Making sure you've got your communications path set up ahead of time. Don't want to be figuring this out in the midst of the battle, and that everybody understands what those communications paths are. They've got the access to those communications paths, and they know how to dial in to be able to do this. 2, the second C is coordination. It's one thing to have the communications path, but it's another thing to have it coordinated to where everybody knows who needs to be where, when they need to be there, is prepared because they've received the information and know what they need to do, and they get there and they work on this. And I'd say the 3rd C is collaboration. And this is exceedingly important because you find that there are systems at different levels of expertise in your systems. And so you get together super experts with experts and to help solve problems and bring everybody along in order to remediate the incident that you have. So that's kind of a breakdown of the hierarchy and an experience that we have in this particular instance, but it really applies to any of these situations.
Thank you so much, Mark. And I know, San Diego is a global hub, not only for defense, but high-tech development and manufacturing, renowned education and research institutions, as well as tourism. This creates an unfortunate bullseye for damaging attacks to our region. So Ian, what are some of the leading threats you're seeing at the state and local government levels? And how is the new San Diego Regional Cyber Lab working to mitigate?
That's a great question. Yeah, so about 2 years ago, we conducted sort of an informal regional survey of a lot of public and some private institutions across the region. And we've come to understand at least some of the more common issues that especially the small and mid-sized public agencies seem to share. And so we asked them, what are some of the biggest challenges to improving cybersecurity at your own agency? And it seemed that, across the board, one of the more common responses was that there was just simply a strong desire to increase the sheer quantity of dedicated cybersecurity staff in their organization. And along with that, all of the training necessary to get that staff up to speed. And so I think at a certain level, it's a numbers game that we all just want to get more cybersecurity staff on board. With the second biggest response from a lot of these organizations was, again, related to staffing, but more specifically staff expertise. So when you're looking at small and medium-sized public agencies, a lot of the times what you might see is more generalized IT staff where they serve a variety of roles across the organization. So you might have an individual that is your primary help desk contact, but they're also dealing with networking orders. And they're dealing with cybersecurity tasks as well. So they're great generalized staff, but I think a lot of what these organizations are looking for is, at this point, staff with expertise in a particular area. But what we also face is a form of sort of negative unemployment a lot of the times in this industry. So there are oftentimes more jobs available than there are people to fill them. Another challenge that some of these organizations are facing is simply a response bandwidth or even a preparation bandwidth. You only have so many staff on hand to deal with whatever's getting thrown at you and to prepare for what you expect might be thrown at you in the future. And so again, a lot of it comes down to staffing. And last, I think the other big challenge that they're facing is simply competing business needs and funding priorities. I think we can all, agree that there's only so much budget in any given organization, and you're always fighting to get whatever money you can. And so getting as much as you can into cybersecurity as possible is really important to all of these organizations and a constant challenge for them. In terms of how the Cyber Lab can help, so we're developing a number of ways that we're hoping will really benefit the entire San Diego region. So we have established some partnerships with educational institutions in the area. In fact, several of them actually reached out to us before we reached out to them. And they told us, look, we have a number of students who need capstone projects. They're working in cybersecurity. Do you have, other organizations that you've networked with across the region who might benefit from a free penetration test, a free vulnerability assessment from a group of students that need to put a project together? And so we're hoping to build some of those bridges to where, especially for those smaller organizations that might have the capacity to perform all these services themselves, and also perhaps not the budget to also pay for all of these services as frequently as they'd like, that we could leverage some of the student populations in the city. We're also developing a number of cyber ranges. And so for anybody watching that doesn't know what a cyber range is, sort of think of like a shooting range for a police department. It's a safe, walled-in area. You can break things and rebuild things, and you're not going to harm your organization. And so we are building a cyber range that's going to be accessed remotely or within our physical lab space downtown. And all of the trusted partners that we have, they're going to be given access to test their own organization's tools and their own team's capabilities to protect their own organization against a variety of different circumstances. We also know that threat intelligence feeds are really important, and sometimes they are also incredibly expensive. And so we've been lucky enough to get some grant funding from the federal government, and we have purchased a variety of hardware and software. But some of the software we've purchased is some licenses for very pricey threat intelligence feeds. And what we'd like to do is provide those licenses temporarily to a variety of organizations across the region, so they can at least get a sense of, what might they get out of a tool like this, so that they can test it out, no cost to them, so that in the future, hopefully more organizations across the region will use more products like this. And then we're also purchasing some additional hardware and software. So we do have a physical lab space in downtown San Diego, where we have a variety of workstations that have Macs and PCs. We've purchased a variety of forensics hardware and software that are used by forensics experts today. So if you're an organization that works with forensically sensitive data, this would be a great opportunity to get some hands-on experience with these products, perhaps before your organization buys them yourselves. And then we're going to have a server rack with a bunch of servers in it, and we can build, to your heart's content, whatever you'd like to see in there. And if you'd like to bring your organization in and play some scenarios, maybe some attack and defense, to build a version of something from your own institution, and then test your team's abilities to defend themselves against potential attacks. You can run all sorts of scenarios. And then just, more simply, we have our physical lab space downtown. And so we're hoping that just having that space that we want to emphasize to the region, it's really owned by everybody. We hope that they start participating in events here, and perhaps if you want to hold a training session downtown with your team or with several different organizations, have some roundtable discussions about regional issues that we need to work on together. We're hoping that the physical lab space will provide opportunities like that.
Oh, we're so excited for this new resource. CCOE's been, in the trenches with the city and many partners through the development, and we are very excited to bring this resource online for the region. So
We are too.
I know you kind of mentioned as well, education and research is no stranger to cyber attacks either, facing about a 75% increase since the pandemic's digital push, according to Checkpoint Software. And according to CyberSeek, as we said, here in San Diego, we're facing a deficit of 60,000 cyber professionals to thwart these attacks. So, Jerry, can you speak to the value and the types of programs available to increase cybersecurity training and preparedness across an organization?
Sure. Thanks for the question. I think it's really important, as we think about the framework for that question, that we approach it from thinking about the continuum of need that there is out there. And really, as we think about the opportunities and the challenges, going back to even the complexity that Mark talked about, you just see an awful lot of need for us to be producing information that gets quickly diffused. So at San Diego State University, I think to approach that continuum, there are really three things that we're focused on. First of them is the area of credentials. And so these would be non-degree knowledge ways, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. The second, the degree programs that are formal, and then the third being our research activities. And I think as we go back to sort of that mantra of CCOE, that cybersecurity is everyone's business, it really, in order for it to be everyone's business, we have to be producing the right ways for people to get the information that they know. And in older models that universities have used to approach the diffusion of knowledge, that was always a traditional course that led to a degree that then after a few years said that you were ready to go. But increasingly in the San Diego region and across our society, we see things where knowledge needs to be more discreetly gotten into the hands of folks so they can practically make those changes that are going to be needed to secure their environment. We've innovated in that area through our Homeland Security program and our global campus in creating cyber certificate degree programs that allow you to assess the knowledge that would be necessary to become credible as someone who could respond in these areas. But I think what you're seeing right now in all of higher education is an erasing of that idea that you necessarily have to get to a degree completion in order to have new knowledge that's going to be actionable. So from San Diego State University, you're also going to see aggressive moves into stackable credentials, things that would allow you to have the information that you need to know just in time. And we think as we think about the community threats that are out there, we have a broad area from those who are in the supply chain to even individuals who are at home. Really, cybersecurity is a lifelong learning challenge. If you think about where most of us started our lives, where things like passwords were things that were only reserved for people who had access to certain types of documents, to now to all of us having them. Multi-factor authentication being something that is now diffused. You just see that need for knowledge diffusion. That's really at the epicenter of the mission of San Diego State University. Make sure that we can train people, so regardless of if they're looking for a formal degree, which would be expert level knowledge, or just knowledge that's necessary to better do their job, they have those opportunities. You'll see that grow. I think the second thing that's really important to think about in sort of the role that education plays in the hub of helping defend the San Diego region is the formal degree programs. For folks who are dealing with the complexity of the environments that my colleagues have shared, it's often necessary to know more than just how to use the tool. It's how does the tool interoperate? What are the things that get back to the ethics on the usage of the tool, or the policy and the privacy constraints? All of that complexity really speak to the need to have formal degree programs. And San Diego State University right now has great opportunities in our computer science department, our computer engineering department, our management information studies department inside the College of Business to begin to get at the degree knowledge that you need. I also know that San Diego State University is making aggressive moves into offering a formal degree program that will sort of unite those things. I think the other thing that my colleagues and myself know is that cybersecurity can't be the thing that you think of in addition to your job. It has to be the thing that is the way that you do your job. And one of the transformations that we're really focused on in the curriculum at San Diego State University is to make sure, in particular in the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics disciplines, that cybersecurity and cybersecurity awareness is something that's being taught as a component of our courses. So it's not as if you go through the public health school, get your degree or your master's of public health, and then after that, think about how cybersecurity might apply to the work that you're doing. We want to make sure as folks are getting those degree programs that cybersecurity in multiple disciplines is seen as a component of things. Because I think one of the challenges that we have faced in the past is that cybersecurity was another discipline. It wasn't the way that we executed our disciplines. So that's really another transformation that's going on in the formal degree programs. And then finally, I think for those institutions in particular, San Diego State sitting in the transborder region, our campus in Calexico, we have the special responsibility to think about what research enables us to do. And I want to talk about just a few things there. First and foremost, research in and of itself is creating both new threats and allowing us to create approaches to deal with existing threats in different ways. You appropriately talked about as many threats as we face in higher education. Those are persistent, tens of thousands an hour's worth of automated probes. And then what we have seen fundamentally also is that cybersecurity is no longer something that requires a lot of domain knowledge. When I was a kid growing up, you sort of needed to know how to code and at least have a keyboard that you could get to that would allow you to put commands in before you could become a threat to anyone else. But increasingly in the world that we live, the Amazonification of sort of cyber threat means right now for just a little money, all you have to do is be able to push a button and type in a few numbers associated with where a computer exists, and you can begin to target individuals. And I think that speaks to the importance of sort of the transformative research that San Diego State is at the epicenter of. And I think we have all sorts of new threats that aren't necessarily always interpreted as threats, but it's a good idea without thinking about the vulnerability that we have as human beings. I'd isolate as a specific case, Amazon just about 2 weeks ago announced a new feature that in their use case would allow grandmother who perhaps was deceased to read a bedtime story using Echo to a child. If you actually decipher that, what Amazon was saying was, well, with a little bit of audio recording, we can make anyone say anything. The reality is just probably in the answers that we've given to those questions for those of us who have spoken, there are machine learning algorithms that would easily generate the sort of deep fakes from an audio perspective and increasingly a video perspective that would make it look like we said things that we didn't say. And the research that we're doing, that $160 million partnerships that we have with the Department of Defense, the Department of Homeland Security, is really to make sure as there are these new threats that we're thinking about what do we need to do to counter them, both from hardware, software, and then sort of the ethics and the policy associated with that. I think the other reason that research is important, talk a little bit more about this as we get into Mission Valley, is to think about the training opportunities that are necessary for all of our students to have. In our Homeland Security program right now, we sort of have an all hazards approach. And that means that as our students are moving through the program, they're taking the knowledge that they're gaining through real world work experiences with folks and applying it to problems. That does two things. One, it reinforces to them the importance of this to the outside work that they're going to do, but it also makes for a much better and well-trained workforce, as opposed to having degree knowledge, the old way of doing things, and then applying it when you got into your job. Research really offers us sort of the finishing school to give our students the transformation that lets them know how things actually get applied and to have work experience in doing that. And I would say, just to put an end at the ambitions of sort of where San Diego State University is aiming right now, I'm really happy to announce that we'll be launching an effort to create a cybersecurity center of excellence, really focused on operations that'll be compliant with the NICE standard. And we think that that's important because of the epicenter of being able to look at what research offers us as an opportunity to provide the right workforce development opportunities, and then to be breaking off those individual elements of degree knowledge that are going to be necessary for citizens and folks acting staff-wise in both the public and the private sector.
Well, Jerry, such fabulous resources for the community coming out of SDSU. And, you know, as kind of Miguel alluded to at the beginning, you know, we are also seeing a considerable uptick in supply chain attacks. As we mentioned, you know, the average cost of a data breach now is climbing over $4 million. Miguel, what best practices do you suggest for these small to medium-sized businesses that are often the entry point and unfortunate casualties of these attacks?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. I appreciate it. So super excited, right? This is, for a Friday, this is a great conversation, a lot of great sound bites that have come out of there. Ian talked about talent and talent acquisition and the shortage of talent in the area as well, and having the right professionals. Mark talked about vulnerabilities and how to understand the existent risk to today. Jerry talked about cyber excellence and some of the other things that are going on around training. You know, here's what we can infer, a couple things. So there is not one best practice, right? This is what we call security and layers. Yesterday's security landscape or cybersecurity landscape and the processes of yesterday are not the same today, right? And when I say yesterday, I'm talking about they've evolved significantly. The days of having an antivirus program on your endpoint and a good perimeter security, like a good firewall, those days are long gone, right? And so today we look at strategies like, you know, we hear, and this is going to sound a little funny, right? We have red team, blue team, purple team. We're like, well, what are all these colored teams? Like, well, what does this mean, right? But we've got all these exercises that we do, drills, and we practice for when 0 day comes and we have that attack. What do we do, right? What does that process look like? And so kind of taking it from there, what I would tell you is that the best strategy or the best plan is to build a plan, right? If that day comes, what do we do? What is step one? What is step two? What is step three? Who do we call? Who's the next person that calls? Who do we get engaged? But from a more tactical perspective, there's a lot of different things that we can do. And so the first thing that we want to do is make sure that we do have all of these drills or exercises that we talked about in place to some degree. More specifically around the supply chain itself, it starts with being proactive. And that's where I would tell you is that so many companies will react when something happens, right? And there's so many tools and solutions that we can use today that are cost effective to help us get an understanding or visibility into what the inherent risks are that exist for my organization. So the days of just protecting my organization, those days are gone. That's not enough anymore. We are connected in today's modern world in so many different ways to so many different vendors. And when organizations think about their vendors, the first thing they think about, or myopically, they're only thinking about my IT vendors. No. You've got a lot of different vendors. You've got the vendor that supplies the paper and pens and ink to your company. the guy who's dropping off uniforms and cups and everything else for the break room. You've got HR applications. You can name hundreds, if not thousands, of different vendors that we're connected and dependent upon and that we're sharing information with, right? If those vendors that we're doing business are not doing the safety exercises that I talked about, the red team, the purple team, and the blue team, and the incident response, and all the other things that we're talking about, if they're not taking the same due diligence that you are, and they're connected to you and something happens, you've left the door wide open, right? And so what do we do in this scenario? So there's tons of solutions out there that do cyber scoring and whatnot. They're all evolving and they're getting better. But here's what I recommend to organizations. Start by understanding what your inherent risk is, right? Who are these critical vendors that I'm doing business with, and how am I connected to them, and what data do they have, and what can we do? There are solutions out there that leverage, like Jerry talked a little bit ago, machine learning or taking it a step back, AI, that leverage AI that can automate processes that once were a very manual, very heavy resource consumptive kind of a scenario or process. We can automate these and use solutions like Riskrecon, for example. And I've got other competitors in the market space as well that can run security assessments, give you visibility into where there's potential risks or gaps that exist with the vendors that I'm working with, and then create an action plan, start to collaborate. Communication, I think, was brought up earlier. Communicating with these vendors about what your SLA, what your expectation is of them, and vice versa, and then start to tackle those gaps, right? And it's not about tackling, Mark knows this really well, there's over 100,000 known vulnerabilities in the wild. To think that we're going to go tackle all 100,000 is probably not realistic, because maybe not all 100,000 apply to your organization, but understanding which ones are critical and most important to your organization and understanding where those gaps are the first step in prevention. And so it goes to prevention, understanding and visibility, making a plan, and then executing on that plan. And so I would say looking at solutions that can do continuous monitoring to help you understand the cyber hygiene of not only your organization, but your vendors is equally important. And then understanding the potential risk that is introduced with those vulnerabilities or those risks that we're seeing is also. Then the last part of that's the collaboration piece. Once we start to collaborate, we can start to build a plan of remediation, an action plan, and start to execute on that to help us safeguard. It really sounds scary, but the reality is that if we take a couple different steps ahead of time and do this early rather than when the snake bites us, we're going to be ahead of the game, right? We're never going to be 100% ahead of the bad guys. It's just the nature of how it works. At least that's what I've seen in 25 years in the field. But we can take steps to help us prevent, so that if that day comes, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when that day comes, are we prepared, and how do we best deal with that situation?
Great. Thank you, Miguel. And great discussion, gentlemen, about lessons businesses can learn from the cybersecurity trenches. But let's take a minute to turn the tables a bit. Mark, what are some of the top security challenges that you face as a CISO for the Navy's Information Warfare Systems Command, and how can industry help?
Well, I'm not going to be very sophisticated with my first one, but to me, it's the base of everything in cybersecurity, and that has to do with things evolving around our personnel. We've got really, when you take in the vendors that support us, we have over 20,000 people that are supporting NAVWAR and carrying out our mission. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of potential links in the security chain that could be broken, and you've got a real problem. And so I'd say that the number one piece is cybersecurity, making sure that folks are all cybersecurity trained, and it's part of their daily function, and it almost has to come without them thinking about it in the way that they operate when they get onto our networks. And so the Navy, or the Department of Defense, has annual cyber security training requirements out there. And so making sure that that training is available via multiple means, and making sure that everyone gets their training every year, so they are reminded, one, of the, what are the baseline things that you do, and then two, when there are new particular issues out there in cybersecurity, that they are aware of those issues as it affects them. So the training is a really big one. And the access to our networks by our folks, and making sure that nobody gets on our networks until they're properly trained and their behaviors are proven over time. Privileged access to our systems. This is we build things here at NAVWAR, and privileged access to the systems that we build. It's so incredibly important that we make sure that the folks that are going to be touching our systems on down to the working with the operating system, they're managing code, etc. Those individuals are authorized to work on our systems, that they have the necessary training and certifications to work on those systems, that they're current enough that they're not going to cause a problem because they're lacking that training. So privileged access, very important. Our cybersecurity workforce certifications and training. So there's the broader training across our entire workforce, but we also have folks that have particular functions that are part of core to our cyberspace workforce. In other words, you are doing things with our systems that you absolutely need to have cybersecurity at the core. And this gets down to folks like the developers, the program managers, engineers, etc. And so making sure that the cyberspace workforce gets that additional level of training and certification before they touch our systems, and then it is ongoing throughout their job responsibilities. Then we also, out of my office, we get into, okay, so what do you do on a personnel level? We have spillages that do happen, going from one domain to another occasionally. I hate to say it, but it does occasionally happen. Most of them, fortunately for us, at least so I don't have to work it so much, come from outside organization where we get an email from somebody that they had information in there that shouldn't have been in at that particular security level. Well, there's cleanup that has to happen on that. So we work on the spillage cleanup out of here and make sure that we contained the problem. The other thing is improper use of equipment. People mess up, or the one I like best is they left their computer. This has happened more than just a small number of times with people working during COVID. They left their laptop sitting there, and their little girl comes over and she plugs in her mobile device to charge it on mommy or daddy's laptop. Bingo. Fortunately, we have network systems that immediately detect that there's been an unauthorized device connected up. Now we have to go ahead and make sure that the individual is informed, their supervisor informed, they get remedial training to handle these particular situations. So I always laugh about that one. And then there is an inappropriate access to websites and downloading information. Fortunately, over time, I think we have rooted that almost completely out of the problem space by education and by administrative responses to folks that are improperly behaving on our networks. So that personnel side is so core to everything. I'll touch really quickly so let me say what our challenge is there. The government, we seem to have a lot of old processes and tools in order to be able to do our administration of things like on a personnel level. We really have got to get out of that, because with these type of numbers of managing the access components, we really do need to have more automated systems to be able to carry these functions out. And so we're trying to work with that. We're moving a lot more toward robotic process automation and utilizing enterprise capabilities for managing these things. But we need more help from industry on developing capabilities that help us reduce the amount of time it takes us to go ahead and carry out these functions. And ergo, it's going to reduce costs, and it's also going to reduce vulnerabilities. Another area is we're all under risk management framework for getting authorizations to operate on our network. And this is they're putting systems on our network to operate. And it's a great system. I absolutely believe in the way it's laid out, according to NIST, lays out the controls that need to be applied to your systems. Love that piece of it. But the challenge we have is it is pretty onerous. It's a compliance based system, and instead of what's a true risk system. And so it's more administrative determination of the risk. We need to get out of away from that and get to more of a risk-based cybersecurity approach instead of move away some from that compliance approach. But we need help as far as the tools aren't really conducive to this yet. We're working on this in order to be able to truly reach down into our systems and see not just every year when you get your cybersecurity check, that it's constant and ongoing on what the risk is of that system, regardless of where it is in the world, down to a trench with a Marine, or down to a ship that's over in the Western Pacific. So that's what we're working toward, working on processes and tools to get there to continuous monitoring of our systems. And so that's a big one. We utilize, for some of this, we're utilizing more of model-based system engineering. We're working on governance, risk, and compliance tools that automate some of this. And then also tools that we're developing in order to be able to get that reach down and clear down to the platform level and endpoints on the platform level to be able to raise that up and get a risk determination. So more to follow on that. Our organization, as well as the Navy as a whole, is working very hard in this arena to get us more risk-based focused instead of compliance. Another area that is really, really important, and that's with our defense industrial base, protecting our government information. If you are operating, if you are doing things for the Department of Defense, if you have defense information on your systems, if you are operating on defense networks, safeguarding the covered defense information and making sure that you're reporting cyber incidents in accordance with the DFARS clauses that come in your contracts, making sure that you understand very, very carefully on what your responsibilities are with those protections and incident reporting. That is out on a defense contractor system that has our information on it, we need to rapidly understand what the situation is, and we can go ahead and in partnership protect that data and making sure that it doesn't get to the wrong places. And then one more thing that businesses need to keep an eye on, and it's evolving right now. It had a little bit of a hiatus, and that's the cybersecurity maturity model certification requirements. And version 2.0 is coming out, or it's out in draft, and it's evolving the requirements that were part of version 1.0. And so some pilots have been put into place and operated on it, and there's been a little bit of a hiatus, but this is in the process of coming, and need to understand what those requirements are, because it will be applied to no matter what whether you're a small business or a large business, it will be applied to you. And there's certain levels of certification that you need to achieve in order to be able to work on certain levels of defense systems. And so those are some things that keep on my scope, along with a lot of the other stuff mentioned here by the other folks on this conference.
Great, Mark. Great information, I think, for companies of all level, and particularly those that are working in the supply chains, as Miguel mentioned, for the defense industry and for national security. So, Ian, kind of on the same theme, what would you like to see from the broader community and cybersecurity industry for the soon to launch San Diego Regional Cyber Lab to foster greater regional resiliency?
Yeah, so there's a few different things that we would love to see. I mean, for starters, I think, in this day and age, increasing, sort of somebody's level in cybersecurity maturity, or even just sort of tech maturity in general, couldn't start sooner. So I think if you have some young ones, I think even basic education on how computers work, how does your home network work, what's a password manager, what makes a good password, things like that, up into, I think, better cyber education for high schoolers. I think a basic computer science course for individuals that age is at this point is seemingly critical. They're going to be entering the workforce soon. We have a lot of jobs available, and there's going to be even more in the future. I think we need to start pumping in more education into that, sort of population. I think also things like, so obviously with the Cyber Lab, we want to create a more collaborative region in general. And so we would like to see organizations reaching out to one another, and we are happy to be that, you know, sort of glue that binds them together to bridge those communication divides. We would like to see, you know, let's put on some hackathons, some capture the flag events, like Miguel was saying, some red team, blue team, purple team, whatever you want to call it. Let's put on some physical events where we all work together, we network a bit more, we have those communication channels open so that if and when something happens to any of those organizations, they don't just have to rely on themselves, but they can reach out to the greater region as well. Because I think at this point, we are all networked together and we have to rely on one another. And also, you know, a lot of small and medium-sized organizations, they have a lot of outside resources for cybersecurity consulting. So oftentimes you could get some state and federal consulting work done for your organization. The problem being that a lot of these organizations still don't have the resources to actually implement the new programs that they might be recommended without some additional physical, you know, boots on the ground assistance. And so I think if state and federal agencies could help sort of increase the overall cyber maturity of our region as well by not only assisting with the identification of potential vulnerabilities, but also helping with the physical remediation of those vulnerabilities as well, would be a great help. And then I guess, you know, just selfishly for the Cyber Lab, I think our biggest desire is just for the region to participate with us. You know, we are still on the early stages. We're still buying all of our equipment. We're still getting off the ground. But when we're off the ground, we'd like to see more organizations reaching out to us. We have a quarterly newsletter that we just started. We'd love to see them reach out to us for their own articles. You know, what did another municipality near us just do to increase their cyber resilience? You know, what new tools are they using? So contribute to our newsletter, at the very least, follow it. So if you'd like to contact us, we have a general email, sdrcl@sandiego.gov. That's just San Diego Regional Cyber Lab, abbreviated. We can get you on our newsletter, get that in your inbox every quarter. We're also trying to the best of our abilities, to establish as many different communication channels as possible that might work better for different types of organizations. So, you know, LinkedIn groups, for instance, you know, sort of a private LinkedIn group with different organizations in the region might offer the ability to communicate with one another in a way that's a little bit less formal than, you know, full-on email threads. You know, the email is great, but perhaps it doesn't work for everything. And we might want a little bit more of a social media formatted communication channel that's a little bit more quick. You can pivot quickly, and all of these organizations can immediately get others' contact information through LinkedIn without, you know, handing out your email to the world. So we're finding a variety of ways like that to hopefully help the region out, and we're just hoping that other organizations are willing to participate as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Ian. And a lot of innovation happening in this community right now. Jerry, can you share how SDSU's new Mission Valley campus will help the region get ahead of bad actors with new educational experiences, collaboration ideation, technology advancement, new research, and then how can local businesses get involved?
Sure. Thanks so much for that question. Let's talk a little bit just about what Mission Valley is as a campus for San Diego State University. So a $500 million investment, all of that not coming from tuition, but coming from other means as we look at growing out the opportunity. When you look at the innovation area that's in Mission Valley, you're really looking at three distinct areas as a component of the ecosystem that'll be in Mission Valley. First and foremost, given that we are almost at the start of another football season, is the 35,000 square foot Snapdragon Stadium. And I think that speaks to the intersection of private sector interest, in particular our high-tech partners at Qualcomm, in what can be the innovations that will happen in San Diego, in particular in Mission Valley. Outside of the stadium, you also have 4,500 residential housing units that will go in, 10% of those being targeted to help us address the affordable housing crisis in San Diego. And then you've got 1.6 million square foot of research and innovation space in an innovation corridor And in addition to that, you've got about 80 acres worth of parks that also fuse in the idea that this is a real area that folks will live, work, play, and be educated. So you've got about 95,000 square foot of retail space. And I think as you think about the story of San Diego as a region, it's really important to think about how transformational a stadium can be in beginning to change an area. But certainly in downtown San Diego, we have the story of Petco, what Petco then did in terms of revitalizing the Gaslamp district and sort of fundamentally changing the face of San Diego. When you think about Mission Valley, you have a stadium, you have an awful lot of housing, and you have one landlord who's really focused on trying to make all of this come together to serve the innovation needs for San Diego. So I think it's a great catalytic effort in terms of us having something that uniquely brings together multiple partners. So what does this mean for our cybersecurity opportunities? Well, I think first and foremost, it's really important for all of us, and we certainly love San Diego given we're here, but it's also really important to think about what San Diego is and what San Diego means to the United States. First, San Diego as a county is 1% of the entire population in the United States. So when you do things in San Diego, you do them in America in a scale that you can't do in any other metropolitan region. The second thing that makes us unique is this high correlation of civilian and military assets. There isn't, and I think my colleague Mark would agree with me, there's not a hard boundary between a lot of what we do. The very infusion of our society means that folks are moving back and forth, and we certainly know that outside actors are always looking for a way to find a permissible corridor that they can get in. San Diego, because of the very unique concentration of both private and public and military sector assets, has something that's really unique, and certainly that plays forward in what we see really as the opportunity in Mission Valley. Mission Valley is a living laboratory, which is a small city inside of San Diego with one landlord focused on new knowledge diffusion. How do we bring together public and private sector partners in pre-competitive opportunities to show things at scale? So the opportunity in Mission Valley is to take a good idea and to show how it could actually impact what goes on in a stadium, what goes on in a hotel, what goes on in a residential housing area. All of those things being done and fueled with the enthusiasm and the innovation that you have from our Aztec students, the faculty, and the partners that we bring together. So this concept of Mission Valley as a living laboratory, a new way of doing things at scale in a city that is 1% of America, is a really important economic idea. We think it will draw new opportunities for research in the area and promote the sort of sustainable investments that we're going to need to begin to do things that are transformative. I think the other thing that's really important as the CIO to think about Mission Valley will have more bandwidth in it than any other city area inside of San Diego. There will be hundreds of gigabits that will go into the stadium and Mission Valley. There will be an overlay of the very best wireless technologies brought to us by Qualcomm, vendors, AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon in a 5G space, all which has at the very center of the mission, what can we do differently in San Diego to show the next generation? From digital entertainment to the infusion of healthcare with the public sector and the county, the work that can be done in terms of our interactions with folks in secure facilities. All of that's at the epicenter of what Mission Valley is about. I think it's a great opportunity for us to think about how this public and private sector investment creating the best opportunity in America to innovate. When you think about the Q, the story used to be that we had the biggest parking lot south of the Mississippi. And that's certainly, a thing to be proud of. I think as we think about the San Diego of the future, what we want to say is we have the most innovative test bed with the best technology in America, 1% of our public and private sector partners working together to prototype the ways that we defend ourselves. And I think it's really important, as much as I think we're all committed to compliance, and we know that compliance is a thing that we do. The reality is it is so much easier to be compliant by providing services than it is to audit folks. Mission Valley is an opportunity for anyone who has an idea of how they can transform services to make us safer in various sectors that will be the focus, from digital entertainment to health to our interactions with military, also to areas that'll be exciting in terms of esports, to come together, practice things that then can become products. That's the opportunity, and we're really excited about it at San Diego State University.
How could we not be? So we hope we've inspired our audience really to take action now to help create a more secure digital community for all San Diegans. For those that are ready to get started, Miguel, how can an organization better understand not only their cyber posture and hygiene, but those they do business with?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. So, Jerry, I'm going to piggyback off what you just said. I mean, what Mission Valley is doing, and some of the other things going on. I'm going to say automation, right? The more that we can automate these things, the easier it becomes to become part of our mainstream and kind of our everyday, whether it's everyday life as a consumer or as a business partner or as a vendor or as an organization, whatever that may be, right? But automation's key. And I guess what I would say to that, Lisa, is that organizations today have at their fingertips the ability to go and do, whether it's a trial, a POC, and start somewhere, right? Start by downloading the solutions, reaching out to Riskrecon. Myself here, I cover the whole Southwest. I'm available to, I'm an active board member of the CCOE as well. Happy to talk to you about the resources and the partnerships that we have with solutions that automate and can help you leverage AI so that you can get visibility into your cyber posture and your cyber hygiene, right? Or more easily said, like a credit score, but a cybersecurity score, right? So that you can understand exactly where you're at. And so reaching out to either Riskrecon or any of my competitors is one way to do it. Reaching out to your local reseller and partners and having them help you put together a set of solutions or tool set that you can look at, and reach out to the experts like myself on this panel or my colleagues that are on here. We can absolutely give you direction and different resources that are available. You can visit the CCOE website. You can see a numerous amount of resources that are on there. But I think the most important piece is take the first step, right? And understand the technologies that are out there that can help you mitigate that risk, reduce the risk, understand where it's at, and start to plug those holes or the weak links in the chain. And so, one of the major ways that we can do that is leveraging this AI technology, automating these processes so that we can do more with less, right? The days of having to need 3 or 4 full-time employees just to do your TPRM, those days are gone. You don't need that, right? You don't have to have, a team of 12 dedicated to just looking at your vendors. There's other ways to do it, but I'm excited to be part of that. I think, as we continue to evolve, we're going to see that things like TPRM, third-party risk management, VRM, vendor risk management, supply chain management are going to be an integral part of every security program, cybersecurity program, just like the tabletop exercise that we talked about today, blue team, red team, intrusion detection, test, as well as web application testing and penetration testing, et cetera. All those are must-dos. We're going to see that VRM and TPRM strategies are going to be an integral part of any cybersecurity program. So I encourage organizations out there to take that first step, reach out to us, and we can certainly do, a demonstration and talk about how you can start to integrate and put these solutions cost effectively and implementation effectively, right? So that it's not a huge overhead to do. A lot of these solutions are SaaS-based today, so it's not something that's going to require you to have a 13-month engagement and trying to install the most complex GRC product in your environment. It doesn't do that, right? You can get some of these solutions implemented within a matter of, less than 30 days, less than 15 days in a lot of situations or circumstances. So anyways, happy to do that, Lisa, but I think that's the first step is reach out, understand who the players are in the space, reach out to the resources and the experts that and they can help guide you in the right place for the right solutions for your organization and your needs.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Miguel. And it's been a fabulous discussion today. Any final thoughts on lessons learned from the cybersecurity trenches that can potentially help our audience navigate a threat? So maybe one each.
I'll pile on just to touch on what Jerry said about the military and the local community arrangement, particularly when it comes to folks that have experience on the military side and also that receive training in cybersecurity and engineering and other curriculum while they're in the Navy. Great contributors out to the community. And the great news also is because they're working on our systems in the community, we get payback on working on our government systems also when they belong to industry.
Great. Thanks, Mark.
I have one, Lisa. I would love to take Ian up on his offer around hackathon. I would love to participate and help you with that. Our organization at Mastercard, we do an annual internal only hackathon where you submit your ideas, projects, and things of that nature. But what I was thinking is countywide, not only city of San Diego, but leveraging North County as well as part of that, and maybe targeting our high school youth, getting them interested. So as they look at higher education, look at SDSU, UCSD, and some of the other academias here in the region, and getting them excited, because at the end of the day, we have a shortage of this expertise in this region. And what would be better than to train these folks and keep them here, right? Retain them here in our area for a lot of the jobs in the industry that we have here. So I would love to partner up with you, maybe think about something for into the year or maybe into early 2023, Ian, and leveraging the power of Mastercard and seeing what we can do, and the CCOE, Lisa. So I'm excited about this whole hackathon. It made me think about DEF CON going on right now in Vegas with the whole Black Hat thing. And I remember there's a story, the guy walks in and they tell everybody, turn off the Wi-Fi on your phones. And there's always a couple guys that don't turn it off, right? And the next thing you know, all the pictures on their phone are being displayed on all the major panels all over. You're like, why did I do that, right? But anyways, was thinking about that, Ian. I thought that, got to protect ourselves. So
I think that's a great idea. I think that is exactly what we're aiming for. I think our goal is to have San Diego thought of as a holistic region that is cyber mature. That is, I think we all have notions about what Silicon Valley communicates as a region. I think in the same capacity, we want San Diego to be representative of a certain level of tech maturity. And I think whatever we can do, I would love to put on some special events like that. I think early 2023 is the perfect opportunity for that. In the next few months, we're getting off the ground. We're getting our hardware in place in the next couple months here. So yeah, let's link up and we'll put something together.
I know a guy at SDSU that we can call. I know a guy at SDSU that we can call. He might be able to help us.
Well, and I think, sort of in closing, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to be on this esteemed panel. I think the largest takeaway that I have is that cybersecurity is a team sport. And you see through the actions of CCOE, the regional coordination that's going on through the San Diego Cyber Council, a real effort in San Diego to try to realize the interdependence that we have, and the fact that while each one of us has organizations behind us that have really unique contributions that they make, not only to the region, but back to the United States as a whole, that it's only through that collective collaboration that we're ever going to face a real opportunity to reduce our risk. Because the thing that our opponents look for, those are both nation states and individuals, are where we don't collaborate. It is the lack of collaboration. It is the I versus the we that creates the opportunities for everyone to become vulnerable. The team is the way that you approach that. The partnerships and the integration is really the thing that makes it difficult for someone to find the seam that creates the opportunity to exploit the breach.
Absolutely. Well, many thanks, Ian, Mark, Miguel, and Jerry, for this incredibly insightful discussion. I know I'm quite energized. I hope our listeners are ready to join the fight with us. We do invite our listeners to visit CCOE's website at sdccoe.org for lots of information, a lot of which we've discussed today, as well as free resources and the opportunity to register for our complimentary cybersecurity awareness program available to all small businesses with less than 100 employees in our region. We want to thank you for joining us. We look forward to our next San Diego Business Journal Cyber Trends panel discussion this fall. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.